think 12 to 15% rental return in Northern Cyprus are realistic? Or are you setting yourself up for a disappointment? Here, one investor would earn up to 8%, another would barely make 3%. Same country, different strategy. Here's what makes the difference. In Northern Cyprus, I often come across the claims about potential rental returns. Many developers and agents are promising anywhere from 12 to 15% annual yield. But in my experience, these figures are rarely realistic. As many of you know, resale properties in Northern Cyprus are being snapped up at relatively low prices. And one of the most common questions new buyers ask is, what is the actual rental yield based on real numbers? In this video, my dear friends, I'm going beyond the marketing hype to share the real numbers and the real experiences. So stick around and I'll explain exactly how much you can earn on rental here. A recent market report shows that rental yields in Northern Cyprus can range anywhere from 4 to 12%, depending on the location, on the property type, and of course on the rental strategy. Realistic numbers for well-located resale properties can range anywhere from 7 to 12%, while weaker markets yield closer to 4%. Let me begin with the reasons why rental properties here in Northern Cyprus are so high in demand, whether it's a long-term or a short-term rental. And the first reason is the fact that we have a very limited number of 3 to 4-star hotels at an affordable price. Majority of the hotels here in Northern Cyprus, they are 5 stars. A lot of the times they have a casino in them. And the price for a room in those hotels range anywhere from 200 euros to 500 euros per night, targeting mostly gamblers, not the actual families. And what does it mean for the rental? Well, my dear friends, that means that nowadays more and more families are choosing to rent an apartment at a fraction of a price that they would pay for a hotel, while enjoying more space to themselves. And that's exactly the reason why all-inclusive resorts became so popular in Northern Cyprus. Any modern complex nowadays will include every single facility a hotel would have, including indoor and outdoor swimming pools, kids' playgrounds, even kids' kindergarten with a private nanny that you can hire. A lot of the times there would be an aqua park, restaurants and bars on site, gym facilities, sport courts, outside playgrounds, barbecue areas, green zones, etc. A lot of the times there would be a commercial built around the complex for the convenience of the residents. And that's exactly the reason, my dear friends, why a lot more tourists are nowadays asking themselves a question. Why would I pay more for a hotel room while I can enjoy the same type of facilities having an apartment to myself at a fraction of a cost? Another valid reason would be that there is no budget tour packages. You see, Northern Cyprus isn't included in cheap tour packages for the tourists, meaning that a lot of the times travelers turn into booking accommodation independently on websites like Airbnb and Booking.com, making rental properties a very popular choice because of its price. Another trend that emerged over the last few years here in Northern Cyprus is the potential buyers that are looking to buy property in Northern Cyprus. A lot of the times they come and rent an apartment within the same type of resort that they're looking to buy to experience the lifestyle, the service, the management, to see what the occupancy rate is, etc. So they're the ones who will be renting your apartment as well. Another reason is that Northern Cyprus is not an all-inclusive vacation type of destination, okay? A lot of travelers come over here to experience different corners of the island, go to different beaches, experience cuisines in different restaurants, go out at night, or maybe go to the car pass to the untouched coastline, giving the preferences to the flexibility rather than a hotel routine. And of course, this type of segment chooses short-term apartments rather than a hotel booking. Last but not least, my dear friends, is the global instability that drives the demand for short and long-term rental to the new heights in here. You see, geopolitical unrest in CES countries, Europe and even Middle East has made the TRNC a fast relocation destination with no visa required and a very easy residency. TRNC has become a very popular place for either relocants looking for a new permanent place for life or for those who use it as a base while planning their next move. Now let's turn to the facts that limit rental potential here in Northern Cyprus. And the first and the most important one, there is no direct flights other than from Turkey. So to fly to Northern Cyprus, you have to either fly via Turkey, changing the planes in one of the airports located in Turkey. Either a lot of tourists, they choose to fly to Larnaca or Paphos, and cross the border to come to the north side of Cyprus. But that creates inconvenience for the travelers because it's extra expenses for the taxis, or they have to hire a car, and it's quite a bit of a journey to cross the border from the south to the north. And even though there are discussions and proposals are being made about direct flights to Northern Cyprus, we still have a long way to go before they can be implemented. Another factor that limits rental potential is the oversupply of certain types of properties in certain areas. A perfect example would be a region of Iskele, okay? 80% of the investors used to buy studios or 1+1 bedroom apartments, okay, for the investment purposes to rent them out at a later date. And the supply of those types of properties is so high on the market currently that it drives the prices down because of the competition among those properties. Whereas, let's say, if an investor bought 2-bedroom apartment within the same region, the amount of it is very limited. Of course, making this property very high in demand, especially with the factor that a lot of families with children come over here. So the prices for those type of properties, they stay on a very decent level and the occupancy rate is a lot higher. Also, the cost of living here in Northern Cyprus has contributed to the downshifting of the demand. We all know that inflation has been hitting every single country, right? But aside of the inflation, Northern Cyprus experienced high inflation due to depreciation of a lira. And that in turn drives the prices for everything, whether it's dining out, going out, or even renting the property, or maybe bills, driving the prices a lot higher. And of course, that makes budget travelers look for alternative destinations rather than Northern Cyprus. So why yields are all over the place? Well, my dear friends, prices vary dramatically. Let's say one investor bought a studio in 2015 for £50,000. Another investor bought the same type of studio within the same complex. Of course, it would be a brand newer one, bought for £120,000. So let me tell you, naturally, rental returns would vary dramatically. As well as that, my dear friends, most of the time, developers and agents, while calculating your ROI, would exclude things like furnishing your apartment, taxes that needs to be paid, or any other costs associated with the purchase of your apartment. Whereas experienced investors, they always include those costs into calculation of a ROI. And of course, that makes a huge difference in numbers of real returns. Short-term spikes distort expectation. You see, my dear friends, crisis periods and sudden demand surges can temporarily boost yields, but those peaks do not last and often mislead newcomers. A perfect example of that would be 2022, when the conflict between Russia and Ukraine had begun. We had an absolutely unprecedented growth in demand and surge in demand for the properties among CES countries. And let me tell you that the resale market, the biggest chunk of it, actually comes down to that particular market. People who bought property in 2022 from CES countries, they are the biggest pool of people that are reselling those properties nowadays at either no profit or a lot of the times at a loss. So what are the realistic yields today, you would ask me? My dear friends, if you purchase a property today here in Northern Cyprus, I would say 7 to 10% is a strong realistic yield on a resale market if you choose the location right and counter all the costs associated with your investment. 4 to 5%, my dear friends, is more likely in less optimistic scenarios, in oversupplied areas, and of course, if you choose a fund that is oversupplied as well within that particular region. If we talk about capital gains in Northern Cyprus, it heavily depends on the location and the price that you purchased and the type of fund that you've purchased as well, my dear friends. So if you invest wisely, if you choose a right location that is high in demand and has a limited supply, the capital gains would be surprisingly good over the years. But again, do not expect to buy a property and sell it within a year or two. I would rather choose a long-term strategy for capital appreciation type of investments. Don't expect high returns within 1 or 2 years of investing and then reselling your property. I would say that give it at least 5 years for your capital to appreciate to a certain level and get good returns. So what are the key factors would you need to consider for your successful investment strategy? Well, first of all, is the location. It has to be high in demand and lower in supply. Secondly, does your complex have an infrastructure within? Is there a pool for kids to enjoy? Or maybe there is a kids' playground? Is the community gated and is it well maintained? Things like that will play a huge role on the resale market as well while you're trying to sell your property or rent it out. Good views from your property would play a huge role as well in rental demand for it. So when you're choosing an apartment or another type of property, so try to pick it with a good sea view or a good mountain range view. And trust me, your apartment will be a lot higher in demand comparing to the other ones. And of course, ideally, you buy a property below the market value. That in turn will give you a lot higher yield returns. Final takeaways, my dear friends. Forget the 15% hype. It's marketing, not reality. Have the realistic expectations. It's 7 to 10% gross in prime resales, 4 to 5% elsewhere. So, my dear friends, did this video help you to see what's really possible? If so, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for the weekly updates. And also share your rental yield experiences below because your insight might help someone else. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.